Now, this is not one of my usual videos. In this video, I'm going to be totally transparent, you guys, because I just want to sit down, have a conversation with you guys about spiritual awakening, about my spiritual awakening. Because when I first started learning about all this, all what I talk about on this channel, Dolores Cannon, earth angels, ascending to a higher vibration, just vibration, period. It was all new to me. I was, just trying to understand myself at the time, because I started feeling a certain way about this life that I'm living. I'm sure you had a time where you said, why am I here? What's my purpose? And the reason why I had that train of thought at that time is because, I don't know, it just seems like I was doing what everybody else was doing. And I was still feeling empty. I was feeling empty inside. You know what I'm saying? And I didn't want to feel empty no more. So I went on this journey to learn about myself. And the spiritual awakening happened. And when that spiritual awakening happened, that's when my whole life just changed. I mean, I just started seeing things in a different way, people in a different way, just life and how everything worked in a whole different way. And it was just fascinating. It was crazy. And I had to, tell people about it. I told my family about it. I told my friends. And you know what happened? They all said, "You're crazy." They told me I was crazy when I said that I think this planet is ascending. I think something is going on this planet. First I was talking about the Illuminati, the Matrix, and all that stuff when I started learning about it. But then I just got deeper because I started learning how to meditate. Once I learned how to meditate, I started having weird dreams. And these dreams was just about ascending. It was about being different. Because when I was younger, I'm going to tell you a brief story, and then I'll get back up to the time I had my little spiritual awakening. But when I was younger, I didn't go to church all the time like everybody else in my family. I'm talking about 9, 10 years old, 11 years old. My mother, she was very religious. She was a Christian, by the way. And I had 2 other brothers. So they would get up and go to church. But me, I wanted to stay asleep. I didn't want to get up. So she used water to get me up every Sunday. Every Sunday she had to use water to get me up, and I had to go to church. And when I was in church, I listened to the pastor and everything, but it just wasn't registering. It just wasn't clicking. I was like, what is he really talking about? I know he's talking about things that's in the Bible, but how does that relate to today? That's what I was saying when I was younger. It just, something wasn't right about what the pastor was saying and what was going on in the world. I just didn't accept everything that was said. I don't have anything against religions or anything like that. I think everybody needs to find their fate and follow God. But I was just that type of person that questioned things. I was like, what does this really mean in the Bible? So you saying that he walked on water? Or you saying that this snake was actually talking? So I was asking questions like that. I was asking questions like, so God it said, I made man in the image of us, or in the image of me. So what are you saying? And you're saying, I'm God? And they say, no, don't say that, you're not God. That's blasphemy. So I was like, just wondering, why did they put that in there? And it says what it says, but we're not God. So I would question things like that. I would question, why is everybody doing the same thing or acting the same way or thinking the same thoughts all the time? So this is when I'm 10, 11 years old. I would ask all these questions. I never forget all these questions I was asking, because as I got older, I started to understand that we live in a society where we're programmed. And, I didn't just make that up. I was just saying something is going on, because it's some type of reason why everybody's thinking the same way. And then, that's when I found out about being programmed. And I found out that from age 0 to 7, our minds are acceptable to things in the environment, what our parents are saying and everything. So if they lived a certain way and thought a certain way, then all of a sudden you're going to live a certain way, that same way, and think the same way as them. So I was like, why is this? Why is it this way? So as I got older, I'm talking about much older, 30s, 40s, that's when I found law of attraction. And the reason why I found law of attraction, I'm going to tell you this really, really short, brief story, how I found out about law of attraction. I was on a bus going home from work. My car was broken. So when I got off the bus, to transfer to another bus, I got off at a certain location. There's one person, I got off, and then there's one other person got off the bus. Everybody else stayed on the bus. So when I got off, the guy was just kind of looking at me crazy. And I was like, what's up with this guy looking at me crazy? So I said, let me go across the street to the fast food place. I want to see if this guy is kind of crazy, if he following me or what. So I went to Jack in the Box. And once I went inside, I turned around. There he is again, just staring at me crazy. So I just said, maybe this dude just crazy. So I left out of there. I said, let me go somewhere else. So I left out of there and went across the street to a store. Back in the days, Sears. I'm sure you probably heard of Sears. A lot of people that's watching right now probably close to my age. So I went into Sears and I said, let me see if this guy's still going to follow me. I went into Sears. I was looking at some shoes. I looked down the aisle. There he is again, looking at me. So I said, should I confront this guy? Because I was like, if I confront this guy, no telling, he might do something crazy. And, I don't want to have to fight in the store. But what I did was kind of acting like I was looking at something else and kind of got kind of close to where he was. Then I turned around, looked at him, I said, hey man, are you following me? He said, don't I know you? I said, no, you don't know me. He said, oh, I thought I knew you. I said, no. Okay. Then he walked off. And I was like, this is very weird. What's up with this guy? He got to be out of his mind. He must be on something. Then I met my uncle in a store. He was with his wife. And he's like, what you doing here? I said, well, I had to ride the bus and blah, blah, blah to get home. He said, you want me to take you home? I said, yeah. Before we can leave, the guy comes over there again and talks to me like he know me. He's like, yeah, man, what's going on? I'm like, hey, man, I don't know you. Get away from me. And my uncle said, you know me? I said, no, I don't know this guy. He's been following me ever since the bus. And the guy said, oh, I don't know you? Oh, my bad. And he walked off. So that freaked me out. So when I got home, I got on the internet. So the internet was around. So I got on the internet and I just put in, I Googled. I think it was Google that back then, or maybe another search engine. But I Googled, I said, why would somebody follow you around that don't know you? And then the first thing came up was law of attraction. You attract people in your life. That popped up. So I read everything about law of attraction that day. And that's when I went down the rabbit hole. And a couple of years later, I had my spiritual awakening. And when I had my spiritual awakening, I went through all the stages. I was confused. I was mad. I would just break down and cry all of a sudden. I started questioning more things about every little thing I was questioning with my friends, my family. And they thought I was going crazy. Some of my friends kind of stopped calling me. So I felt alone. I felt isolated. I felt like, I was just kind of losing my life or whatever. Not, what I'm saying, the life I currently had with friends and things I was doing, it felt like I was losing that because I didn't want to go out and party anymore. I stopped drinking years ago, so I didn't never want to drink. I changed my diet. Television didn't excite me anymore. All the drama didn't excite me anymore. So I didn't know that I was going to experience all this because at the time I was still learning about law of attraction and that's when I started learning a little bit more about the 3D matrix and spiritual awakenings. And that's when I stumbled upon Dolores. And so when I was going through my spiritual awakening, I was learning about Dolores and I read about what symptoms or what you're going to experience during your spiritual awakening. And I wish I would have known that before I went through it, then I would know how to handle it because I felt like I was having a nervous breakdown. You know what I'm saying? Because I was fighting against trying to stay fitting in with everybody else, but then wanted to take this journey of waking up. So guys, I just wanted to, express my spiritual awakening journey and tell you, it's been a wild journey. It's still going on right now. And I want to know, you guys, have y'all had a spiritual awakening? And did you guys go through the same thing I went through? Let me know in the comments. And also, guys, I go live on Twitch every weekend from 8 p.m. at 8 p.m. And I talk about things like this. And so if you guys want to join me and we can talk about your experience of waking up, come on through. Go to twitch.tv/wokereg. Before you leave, check out this video next. I think you'll like it. Peace, get woke, and keep rising.